Good evening and welcome to the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education meeting this February 24th, 2025. During this regular meeting, two opportunities are provided for citizens to make comments. In order for a citizen to make a comment, they must be physically present at the meeting. During the first opportunity, early on the agenda, comments regarding agenda items are invited. The second opportunity will occur just prior to adjournment when residents may address general comments to the board. Roll call, please, Mr. Usami.
Mrs. Varghese,
Here.
Ms. Calderon,
Here.
Ms. Guzman,
Here.
Mrs. Wong,
Here.
Ms. Keller,
Here.
Mrs. Martin,
Here.
Mr. Stankus,
Here.
Ms. Steffens,
Here.
Mr. Weaver.
Here.
Let's rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by mailing copies of said notice to the record, filing copies of said notice with the municipal clerks of Hillsdale, Montvale, Rivervale, and Woodcliff Lake, and publishing said notice in the record on August 26, 2024. First, we have routine matters, and the first thing that we will talk about is the budget report by Mr. Usami.
Thank you. So over the last couple of years, I've been saying that the budgets have become more and more difficult to put together. And I'm here just to go over things and reason why. There are a lot of reasons. But we have rising costs that are above 2%, just about everything. You look around. Especially the biggest one is probably health insurance. So healthcare is a big one. And we're going to get a healthcare adjustment of almost $800,000. However, that will increase our tax levy. It'll probably increase to about 3.4%. I haven't finalized everything yet because we haven't received state aid, but that's probably where we're headed. So $800,000 is a lot. We're looking at about a 20% increase in health insurance. That's what they're estimating. They're estimating between 15 and 20% so far for the school employees health benefits plan, which is what we're in. I think I'd rather err on the higher side. Last year, they had recommended somewhere around 10 to 14%, and it came in at 14%. So I want to go at the 20%. One of the things that we're also seeing, and we talked about state aid, is declining enrollment. The enrollment's been declining. One of the words that we got from the state, we received a memo saying that we can anticipate a maximum of a 3% cut in state aid. Who does that affect? In all likelihood, our district, since we have a declining enrollment. There are going to be other districts that are rising in enrollment, so they will get more state aid, as well as probably get an enrollment adjustment. So in some of our sending districts, they're going to be experiencing that. However, we won't see that for a little while. It's going to take a little time before those students come into the 9th grade. So at this moment, you can anticipate declining enrollment for the foreseeable future. And that has been going on for the past, since I was here the first time, probably since about 2012, 2013. Okay. The state has, we heard that the state has no plans to increase the 2% tax levy cap, at least not this year. In all likelihood, not the following year either. However, if the state sees how some of the school districts are doing and they're going to be struggling this year, they may change their mind, and there could be a lot of loud voices telling the state that, hey, we need help here. What they may try to do is allow more adjustments. Possibly transportation adjustments, possibly a little more special education adjustments. So that's a possibility. Everything's on the table for the state to look at. But obviously, there's only so much money to go around. So we'll have to figure things out. So that is the main reason why I'm telling you that the budgets are getting harder and harder each year. On top of the healthcare adjustments, Some of the things that we're going to be doing in the budget is we'll be using some additional excess surplus. And I want to let you know that during the audit time, when the audit was presented, I also pointed out that the excess surplus from one year to the next declined by $1.4 million. So you can see that we're not generating that much excess surplus. It's all going into expenses. So what that means is we're going to have less money to put into our reserve accounts, like capital reserve and maintenance reserve. So those are things that we're looking at, and we're trying to figure out how best to situate ourselves. The other thing that we're doing is we're going to be budgeting more extraordinary aid. In the past, we never budgeted extraordinary aid. Last year was the first year, and this upcoming budget, we will also incorporate extraordinary aid into our budget. Not the entire amount, however, we will use some of it. We'll also be using maintenance reserve. So we've been using that for the past few years. And maintenance reserves helps us not only balance the budget, but we have a lot of maintenance projects and maintenance repairs that we have to do during the course of the year. So that helps us out. That'll lower, that's looked at more as a revenue, so it'll balance things out. But I just wanted to get that across, that it is getting harder, and it's not just our district, it's many districts throughout the state. A lot of districts in Bergen County as well. Some of my colleagues, they're telling me that they're going to be increasing their tax levy anywhere from 4 to 5%, maybe even higher, and they are receiving that health care adjustment. And most of them, when they're going that high, they are getting that enrollment adjustment. So there looks like in certain districts that the enrollment is increasing. Like I said, for us, it's going to take a little time, but we should be seeing an enrollment adjustment, enrollment increase probably in the next few years or several years.
Thank you, Mr. Usami. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Usami?
I do. I have a quick one. So with the enrollment, I mean, obviously, Montvale's got a huge building bonanza going on over there. I know Cliff Lake's going to have some stuff going on as well. So that should hopefully, I would hope, help with the enrollment in the next couple of years, if not sooner.
Yes.
Right.
It's going to take a little time, but yes, some of those sending districts that we're talking about, yes, are seeing an enrollment increase.
Yes, I have a question. What is that? You mentioned extraordinary aid. What does that mean?
So that's for special education. So there's certain costs. I don't know, I can't remember what the threshold is, but anything above that, you can apply for it. You don't get dollar for dollar. So in other words, if you put in for, I'll just make it up, $1.5 million, doesn't mean that's what you're going to receive in extraordinary aid. There's a percentage, and it's usually very low. And there was a trend where it got lower. That percentage was lower and lower and lower every year. There was one year, a couple of years ago, where it actually increased, but then it came back down again this past year. I don't know what it's going to be this upcoming year for our extraordinary aid, but typically we get somewhere in the neighborhood of around $600,000 to $700,000 in extraordinary aid. Whether we see that again, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Did you say we're applying for that extraordinary aid, or we're just getting it? That last thing that you said.
We apply for it. We apply for it every year. You have to put application in extraordinary aid through the state.
And you have to have reasons for that?
Yes, yes.
Like?
So special services director does calculations, figures out for each of the students who are eligible for it, and records that and puts that into the application.
So just to kind of clarify that, it is kind of what it says. So costs that are extraordinary. So basically, they're looking at the threshold is between $55,000 and $75,000, depending on the type of placement a student's in. But if our per pupil is closer to like the high 20,000s, if a student is in a placement that is costing the district basically more than say $55,000, there's a possibility we may be able to apply for some of that money back. It's not quite that simple. You have to hit a couple of different metrics. You have to have certain types of services or be in certain types of programs. But basically the state is saying we recognize that sometimes districts are spending more than their average per pupil if students have extraordinary needs. And if those students do have extraordinary needs, you can apply for a reimbursement of a portion of those costs. And I think that, and this I'm not as certain about, I think it was at like 30%, between 20 and 30% reimbursement, but it was capped.
It's always capped, and it's a percentage. It's basically, they look at the pot of money and then decide what they can allocate.
Who's gonna get what, yeah.
So it ranges. What I've been used to is maybe around 35, 40%. But again, it's been going down.
Yeah, and then our total amount that we get back, though, tends to be somewhat stable. Like, we've been looking at about, half a
Generally,
million,
it's about,
$600,000.
$500,000 to $600,000. And typically what we do is, so we're budgeting some of that, and then whatever, you'll see this on the agenda, tonight's agenda, that we are transferring some of those funds that we do have in extraordinary aid into various budget lines. So that helps us.
Yes, can we have a copy of the the decline in the enrollment for the past several years, just to see what's going on?
Sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we have ASSA numbers that we can show you.
Anyone else? Okay. Next, we have the Governance Committee report, which I will be giving. So we had our governance meeting on February 18th via Zoom at 6:30. First, we discussed the 2025 to 2026 calendar, school calendar, and we discussed having a day off for Eid. And so we want to get a preliminary estimate of how many students are at Hills and Valley who would be affected by this and who by the holiday, and who now take the day off themselves for this. So we discussed that, and what we decided is we needed a little more data, and so we're going to look a little bit deeper into, again, how many students does this affect. The next thing we discussed is social emotional learning, and we had talked about having, that's one of the district goals. We had talked about having someone come in and talk about social emotional learning at the board meeting. But his presentation is about an hour long, and we did not think that was a good thing to make people sit here in the evening. So we are going to partner up with Parent Academy, and we are going to do it for parents too, because I think parents also need to know what social emotional learning is exactly, and via Zoom, so we could reach more people, or perhaps like a hybrid in person and Zoom. We also discussed policy 145 about the attendance and removal of a board member. So we widened it to be a little bit more, no, not widened it. We made it more specific. So instead of leaving a gray zone there, there's a little more, these are the stipulations and this is what, and we think we thought that was a better way to just go about the whole thing, to have more detail versus guessing on things. The next thing we talked about was Google Chat, and to the chagrin of many students, I'm sure. So we were talking about, because there's a lot of use of Google Chat, and it's a lot, and it's hard to monitor, and so we talked about it. The issue with Pascack Valley is that we don't have cell service here, right? So Hills, we can always do it if, sorry, Andrew. I know, kids love it. I do understand it, but it is unfortunately a distraction, because I'm sure I've seen it in my own children, you get a text back, LOL, and it's like that distracts you. You're looking at it, you're like, oh, haha. So it is less distracting to not have it, but Pascack Valley, there's no cell service. The cell service is an issue, and we know parents use it to contact their students, their kids, and so we didn't feel that right this second is the way to do it, at least for Pascack Valley. So we did talk more about the cell service at that time also, and I think that we have moved forward, or the town has moved forward. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I don't have anything to share publicly other
Got it.
than. So we know that there are several cell towers that are either being refurbished or put up, and we're hopeful that when that process is completed, we'll have better cell service at Valley.
And then we talked about protocols around prom. So we obviously have junior prom, we have senior prom, and we talked about leaving early for junior girls for junior prom because we had mixed discussion on whether the pros and cons of it, and so again, that's a work in progress that we will revisit too. It was an interesting conversation, that one, but that was it. So any questions? Huh? Who did we? Did we?
Right.
What did we decide?
This was moving forward this year with what they had advertised, which is not really dismissal for the
right,
juniors,
yes.
and then looking at it for
Yeah,
the
thank you.
future.
So we're going to look, so obviously for this year, it's not going to change, but we're going to look at this policy to decide, do junior girls or juniors get to leave earlier to get dressed and, do their hair and do all this other sort of fun stuff. I had, when my daughter was a junior, I know Kristen and I talked about it, like it was just craziness. So I get it. Go ahead, Mike.
So
Mr. Weaver.
I know the expectation was that originally in the communications, they had to be in school all day in order to participate, right?
Mhm.
So is that still the expectation?
So this year, it's not going to be changed because now we're talking about a few weeks out from junior prom.
So I just want to go back to our policy, because policy on attendance says in order for a student to participate in extracurriculars, they need to be in school for a 4-hour day. So if I was to attend school, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I were to attend school in the morning and then have to leave in the afternoon for an appointment, so long as I was in school for my 4 hours, I now have a full regular day, and I would be able to play in my extracurricular game at night. So I guess I'm unclear on, since this is an extracurricular activity, why is the rules different for this when our policy clearly says that if you're in school for 4 hours, you're good to go?
I think it has to do with excused or unexcused absence, probably. The idea is if they're leaving early for junior prom, that's unexcused.
Well, what's the policy say? I guess that's what I want to go back to, because we're in charge of policy, right? So,
No, but I want to clarify, the seniors get out at 1 p.m. and then the juniors get out at 2 p.m. So we're just arguing.
Juniors get out at 3.
Oh,
They
Yeah,
don't
right.
leave.
normal
for-
dismissal,
leave.
They-
unless they have
yes,
Pascack period, last period.
Right.
for 1 o'clock.
For earlier, just to
So
be.
they're
able
not
to-
getting out earlier than the 4 hours.
Right. So to Mike's point, if the policy in the district is that in order for them to be eligible for extracurricular activities, if they put in the 4 hours, how is this particular activity different? And I know we as parents had to sign that we acknowledge it's different.
Yeah.
And the biggest issue I had per se was that if you went to the junior prom, you were allowed to come in late the next day. However, if you did not have the money to go or the desire to go, you had to be in school at the beginning. And I know that created a lot of,
That's changed.
yeah, that was
That's
that was a
changed, yep.
big problem our kids' junior
Yeah,
year, and
that's
it really had a lot of resentment. Okay.
Yeah. So to Mike's point, I understand what you're saying. I suppose that's something that has to be.
Well, and I think that's why we brought it to the governance committee for some guidance, because right now, the messaging that goes out and the permission forms for prom give the parameters, which are right now for junior prom, that you're to be in school for the full day, senior prom, that there's a 1 o'clock dismissal, and you have to be there for the whole time through 1 o'clock. Senior prom is a little bit different in that they do senior seminar that day, so they have a series of workshops and events that take up that whole time span. Junior prom has had a lot of inconsistency with when it was being held, and that's something that I think that we're trying to look at. I know that this year at Hills in particular, it was moved to a weekday. We're looking to try to move that back to a Friday again for future years, but this is a part of the conversation for future years would be, what is that policy around early dismissal? So we started with the governance committee, and then we'll revisit it there, because right now it wasn't moved out of that committee at this point yet.
So my question is, because I've read the permission slip is not in line with what our district policies are. That's my interpretation of what has been distributed to students. Is that correct or incorrect?
So that's not incorrect.
Right.
I hear what you're saying. Again, I wasn't here when they first started doing this whole permission slip thing, but perhaps that's why they're having this permission slip signed, that it is different than the regular policy we have. That's the only thing I could think of that it was done. But I agree with you that it should be revisited, because if that is our policy, then, but we're talking about from 8 to 12, that students would have to be in school.
I mean, with all due respect to the building administration and the teachers who run it, they don't write policy, right? So they cannot create a permission form that is not in line with the district policy. And this permission form, in my interpretation of it, is not in line with district policy. If my daughter does a 4-hour day, she's eligible. What if there's a game that night? I don't think there is, but I don't understand why we're creating different rules for different activities.
Every year there's been a baseball game at PV during every single year. It seems like these poor boys have a game on the same night as prom. And I know that when there was a situation like that, if they went to the game, that was excused, and they were allowed to come late to the prom if the game went later. So I know that they've, and I believe that if you had a legit doctor's appointment, came back with a doctor's note, those kind of things, but they just don't want all of the kids leaving early, is my understanding, on those days, just to get their hair done.
But I understand
Yeah.
Mr. Weaver's point that, hey, if this is the policy, then why isn't it across the board the policy? So I do understand that. I think perhaps that's something that we need to look at sooner rather than later.
Policy committee?
Yeah, well, and that, but to your point, so the building administration has the authority to set certain protocols and practices within the building for the smooth operation of the school, which is what they've been doing for the past, I don't know, I think indefinitely, surrounding prom. And this came up as a discrepancy, which is why we brought it to the board committee to discuss. So governance committee will, at some point, move this forward in one way or another for the board. But that's kind of where we are and how we landed there. And
So I'm
and where we're
correct in
going.
my interpretation of the policy? Yes or no?
I'm not sure of your interpretation of the policy. You're saying 4 hours and then
Well, right,
they leave, they can leave and then attend an activity?
because you have that's what our policy on attendance says. I'm just asking Dr. Bellotti, like, is my interpretation of the policy that we're responsible for correct?
Well, I think we're talking about two different things. So I'm talking about a protocol that the principals have set in place that has been in place for a very long time.
No, I'm asking about policy. If you have a 4-hour day, is that considered a full day, and are you then eligible to participate in extracurricular activities? It's kind of a yes or no.
Yes, that is the policy.
Is that the policy, Dr. Bellotti?
I would have to look at the policy. I think that is what the policy says, but I don't know
I
if
don't
there's been
even understand
exceptions
why we're
to
having
that.
this conversation. Like, it's,
Isn't it because
Well, because
they're-
we've been
they're-
doing
they
this
don't
for a
have
very
an
long time.
excused absence? I'm sorry.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I was getting
Yeah, I
at.
think that's what Jim's saying, is that the point is whether you do a full 4 hours or not, you still might be skipping 2 classes.
If you're not excused,
So
you're not
you
participating in
s-
anything that evening.
Right.
it's 4 hours. I mean, I'm just
Yeah, but-
going by, I read the policy.
Yeah, but you have to be in attendance for every class.
4 hours.
No,
No.
I don't
Yes.
believe that's the way the policy is intended and reads.
That's the way it
No,
reads.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's that you have to be there 4 hours, because it's the same at my school, because kids leave and then come back and play in the sports. I don't know the exact number of hours, but I know they have to make it past lunchtime, like to lunchtime is generally the,
so they're allowed to skip whatever classes they have after the 4 hours, is that
yes.
what we're saying?
But
Or
usually
you
it's
could come
really
in
for like a-
tail end later.
But then you
could-
get, you get marked as not being in class.
Correct, but that doesn't make
There's
you
a
ineligible
penalty.
to do the baseball game.
Right, well, that's
Okay,
the
that's
distinction.
different.
That's
Right.
the distinction.
What's
That's
that?
not what's happening for prom. So that's why there is this other, that's the whole purpose behind, I think, the slip, actually. So I think you're right, but I think it's not like the same. And I think that's kind of what Ms. Pilates, Dr. Pilates.
The policy says,
Yeah, but the policy
If-
doesn't speak to whether or not you're gonna get a cut slip for not attending, whether or not that teacher's gonna say, you were here for 4 hours, but you still skipped my class.
Yeah, but are
No,
they
you're
eligible
signed
for the
out.
prom? That's the
Right.
question. So if I come in, if I leave early, I leave at noon, can I go to the prom since I've made my 4 hours, to Mike's point? So I get cut slips or whatever I get, it's
Oh, I see what
unexcused
you're saying.
absence, but can I still go to the prom, is kind of where, and that's where it is dicey, and this has been a conversation that's come up a couple times.
Can we bring this up at the policy committee and?
well, I think the thing that concerns me is I've heard this has been a conversation circulating, and I find it hard to believe that we're like debating it this hard when if kids want to put in their 4 hours and get out so that they can prepare themselves for what's a pretty big event, whether you're a boy or a girl, like, do it. Like, I live it in my school. End of the year, the kids have their moving up, their parties. I've got a conga line of kids walking out the door, and I expect it, and they're doing their thing, and we embrace it. I guess what I'm not clear on is forget how we feel about whether the kids should or shouldn't. Like, take that piece and just put it over here. Our policy says 4 hours, you can participate in extracurricular activities. It doesn't distinguish between what extracurricular activity you can participate in. So I think that's where I take the exception, because now we're saying, well, you can play in the baseball game, you can play in the softball game, but you can't go to the prom. Like, they're all under the extracurricular umbrella.
I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying.
But
I understand.
Look, we get a roster if people are preparing for a game and have to leave early. The roster comes out, it's notified that they're excused. I think they're just doing the same thing with the prom in that they're getting the permission slips so that they can get the roster so that if I have afternoon courses, I know who's excused and who is not.
No.
Well, I understand that, but to Mike's thing about leaving earlier and missing coursework, you would have to get some sort of excuse for that. I don't think the policy designates the idea of the excused or not.
I'm signing my child out. So if I'm signing my child out and they have their 4 hours,
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, if you're signing your child out, you're signing your child out, that's going to you. But, I mean, going to a game and other things like that, you still get a roster, you still know who's there and who's not.
and I think the other thing, when you look into Friday, it says, I think they need to be there by 9 o'clock. But again, if we're going by the policy, if there's activities on Friday night, they would have to be in by whatever the end of the day is minus 4 hours in order to get the full day in. So again, I'm just coming back to, we're creating forms and structures that aren't in line with the policy as it's written.
I'll put it to you this way, somebody has to be legally responsible for somebody under 18. Whether they're going to the parent or they're with the teacher.
Yeah, but even if Mike signs out his daughter, then he's not. The way it's written, or what it was when Kaylee went, was if I went in and signed Kaylee out at 1 o'clock, she would no longer be allowed to go to the prom. Even though I went into school, I said, she's going with me, she's going to get her hair and nails done. They'd be like, okay, she's not going to the prom tonight with that hair and nail job, you know, so.
Okay, I get
So,
that part.
and that's going directly against, I guess, the policy, and I never thought about it, I just, you know, kind of was what it was. You get, it's kind of a
Right.
privilege your senior year, just like you can't dress up in a Halloween costume your junior year for some unknown reason. So there's just kind of things that we just kind of understood to be the case. But I do think that with that be, if that's our policy, same thing like with the next day, if it's a 4-hour requirement, we have to kind of look and clean that up if that's what we want it to look like.
Yeah.
And what is an excuse absence? Like if somebody leaves to see a doctor, they're never going to question. If you come back with a doctor's note, there was, you know, something like that. But I think what they don't want the whole junior class doing is leaving early because their parents are signing them out.
Fair enough.
I think they should just make it a half a day for the juniors. then you just go. We'll avoid that problem. They got their 4 hours in. Go get ready for your party and have a great time.
Has the issue of a weekend prom ever been
What do you guys think
proposed?
about that?
Weekend,
In favor?
yeah.
So
have
they
it on the
usually do the
weekend.
weekdays. They switched to weekdays, I think, years ago because of the expense, especially in June with weddings and stuff like that. So it's usually cheaper to do a Thursday, and then they do, to get the kids enticed to come the next day for the seniors, it's usually a senior trip the next day, at least at Pascack Valley. So the kids come back the next day and then they go on their trip.
I think Hills traditionally has done it on the Fridays, and I think this year there was a mix-up because of the SATs were the next day. So they had to move the schedule. They moved it into the middle of the week on a different week. And this is what's kind of stirred the class into saying what's going on.
I mean, if we're talking about student health and wellness, seriously, we put such a huge emphasis on this. They get a junior prom, a senior prom.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Like, it's not like it's every week that, or every 2 weeks or once a month that we're saying they, you know, the students should be able to leave early. I hear that, and I agree that we should be consistent across the board. So I think that is something that does need to be revisited, and I guess sooner rather than later in that sense. So perhaps we'll have another governance meeting to talk about this very soon. So I think that, Mr. Weaver, thank you for bringing that to the attention of the board. I appreciate it because I do think, you know, we have to stick by our policies and what the handbook says.
And I
Thank
think
you for allowing me to provide that feedback. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah.
And
you- could
Mr.
you
Weaver, it would be helpful if you want to forward the policies that you think the governance committee should review. That would be helpful, I think, as well, so that we are kind of all on the same page. And then what we did with policy 0145, because it was reviewed by 2 different committees, governance committee reviewed it, policy committee then moved it out of committee onto the agenda, so we could do something similar for this. Thank you.
Do you have it?
So
I'm reading, sorry.
can
Yeah,
we just
I was just
clarify what needs to come out of the committee? Because the policy's written. It's not like we're changing the policy. It's how administration is interpreting the policy. The policy exists, so I guess I don't understand why it needs to go into committee, Dr. Bellotti. We have the policy. We're not changing it. It's the interpretation of it. And, like, read the policy and make sure that we're writing something that's specific to the policy, right?
So I see where you're referencing this in the handbook. I'm actually not seeing specifically what policy you think that they're violating. That's why I was just trying to get clarification on it.
So
It actually doesn't clarify it, yeah.
So it's policy 5200 for attendance.
I think it gives a little bit of, I think there's like some leeway, and that's why the handbook is so clear. So I think we might be, and I'm not trying to be a nudge about words, but I think we might be disagreeing with the language in the handbook, which allows for the 10:02 a.m. arrival. This is why I think that the committee should be looking at what our procedures are, because we have this long-standing procedure around prom of notifying parents and then kind of changing what a normal practice would be specific to prom.
Let's look at it because, you know, looking at the policy 5200 regarding attendance, it's a little hard to weed out the whole thing. There's a lot of, but it doesn't. I don't really say in that policy, just looking at it quickly, that it says. Mr. Weaver, did you read that in the handbook or a policy? Yeah, please, if you would send it to us so that we can make sure that we are consistent in our messaging.
Is it?
Yeah. There's different places
different
that
areas,
it's in,
yeah,
right? So it's
yeah.
in the handbook, it's in the policy. So I think it needs to be put together a little bit more consistently.
Are we able to reconsider this for this year?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think that has to be with a caveat, right? Obviously, the safety of students is going to be the primary concern. So whether we're talking about junior prom, senior prom, does not matter. Safety of the students is the number one concern. So if we're talking about, because I believe that Pascack Valley's prom is March 5th or something, 5th, right? So, we're talking about 2 weeks away. Yeah, about 2 weeks away. So if that's the case, we just have to make sure that the administration for each school has in place procedures to safely allow juniors to leave. Seniors, we obviously have more time because we're talking about at the end of the school year, but if we're talking about juniors, and when is do you know, Andrew, when the Hills Junior Prom is?
The 6th.
Oh. Okay. So there's not a lot of time to plan. So I think the question for this year is going to be, can administration make sure that this is done in an orderly, safe manner for students? So I think that's the first question that we need to answer for this year. So, Dr. Bellotti, I think that's something that we have to look at, and we have to talk to Mr. Wieland and Mr. Puccio about. And then, obviously, if it's something that can be safely done, then, I don't know that there really is that argument for saying no. But again, I want to look at Mr. Weaver, just send me the policies that you looked at and everything like that. Okay? Anything else? Anything further? Okay. Next, we have the Policy Committee report by Mr.
Oh,
Stankus.
yeah, you've heard half of it. No. All right, so we had the Policy Committee meeting on February 11th, and we discussed some revisions of policies and some new policies. So they came through on Policy Alert 234, which is the alert that we get from Strauss-Essman. It outlines all the policies, but one of the bigger revisions was to revise the Uniform State Memorandum of Agreement between education and local law enforcement. So there were several parts of policies which needed to be revised, and it's mainly just a rewording of the policy. And then we also had a revision. These were mandatory, by the way, the Uniform State Memorandum of Agreement. The other one that was mandatory was the eligibility of resident, non-resident students, and that was revised. Another one was high school graduation. We have FOSFA requirements, and so that had to be revised. Use of electronic communication devices. That was suggested to revise. However, in our discussion, moving forward, we were awaiting for the governor's, clarification in regards to, the whole thing is the issue of cell phone use, personal electronic devices. and what the state wants to do on those things. Is it going to be, classroom? Is it going to be entire school? So we're waiting on that. Let's see. There was a revision about academic integrity. Plagiarism was reworded to include all different other types of, I guess, borrowing using AI kind of things. We also had a revision to student grievances and food services. And I attached all those policies in the report, if you want to look at that. New policies, the use of electronic communication devices, again, that we're waiting on. The other one was the code of conduct for interscholastic events. That was mandatory. And the other one was about acceptable use of generative artificial intelligence, AI. That was new. But in regards to that policy, we had one in place already, so we were ahead of the curve on that. Again, we're waiting for the clarification from the state as far as the electronic devices. Anybody else that was on the committee have anything to add?
I believe we had a discussion about what
Oh, yeah.
the board member removal, just talking
Right.
about like good cause reason and clarifying. We talked a little bit about that, like what the good cause would be, like obviously you're sick,
Right.
that family member is, there's an issue with your family, something to that effect. So we just talked through that a little bit and clarified some of the wording.
Right, and that was one of the ones that went to governance and to policy and got back and forth, so, very good.
I have a
Yes.
question, two
Sure.
questions. One question, the student smoking, was that updated to include vapes?
Yes.
Okay, and then the acceptable use of the generative AI, is that now do we have this before? Is it now including that it would be considered with like harassment, bullying, that sort of thing? Was that in there before, do you know?
I don't know if that was in the,
So that's been covered by our acceptable use.
okay, yeah, that was under the, okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Stankus? No. Next, we have the PFA liaison report by Stephanie Huang.
We had our AI literacy for parents and board members on January 28th. It was 90 minutes, and Amanda Bickerstaff, she's the CEO of AI for Education, and she shared the following points with us. And I'm highlighting the things that I found was interesting. One of the first statistics that Mrs. Bickerstaff shared already showed something interesting. 55% of colleges and learning programs discourage AI use, Gen AI use. But 62% of employers surveyed believed employees should have basic AI literacy skills. Right? So the colleges are at 55% discouraging it, but the employers are looking for 62%. Hello, problem. And 70% of recent graduates believe basic AI training should be part of education. So we are in a learning curve trying to figure out when AI should or should not be used. One of the dangers of AI was recently in the news 2024. I mean, this is kind of bad. A 14-year-old, I have to share it. She shared it. It's okay. 14-year-old who used character AI, and that's when you can make an avatar. They customized a girlfriend chatbot, and now the company's being sued because the chatbot made them kill themselves. So now the teenagers' parents are blaming this chatbot, this girlfriend chatbot, that encouraged this bad thing to happen. So now there's software that exists for 13 to 17-year-old for that kind of protection. How to regulate safety, looking at AI ethically, and how do we incorporate AI effectively? They're all looking at that. Mrs. Bickerstaff took the audience, took us through like what are the myths and what are facts. And this was interesting. I did this at home with my kids, with my family. Okay, AI is not thinking, but it's computing, which means it is calculating probabilities. It's not imagining narratives. Like, I always thought it was thinking. So a fun example that you can do, and this is what I've done, is you can ask your AI, how many R's are in the word strawberry? Have fun, you can do it. Do it when you go home. It's a great example because you think you would ask them and there would be obviously 3 R's in strawberry. But the AI doesn't count the R's. It just looks at the chunks of the words, so it got it wrong. The rapid advancement of AI from 2004 has overcome these following hurdles. It has overcome handwriting recognition, like meaning it can do this now. Handwriting recognition, speech recognition, image recognition, reading comprehension, language understanding, common sense completion, high school and college subjects, and code generation. That's pretty amazing. AI literacy matters because we must prepare our students for success in the modern world. AI literacy fosters critical thinking as AI becomes more prevalent in media. AI literacy promotes responsible digital citizenship and digital literacy. There has been a 35% increase in the use of AI from just 2023 to 2024. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Wang. Anyone have questions, comments? Okay. Next, we have the Facility Committee report by Mr. Michael Weaver.
Oh, thank you. So we just met this evening. The topic of conversation was Region 2 Park Academy. Park Academy, unfortunately, will be relocating from Rivervale Roberts School this year because they are tight on space. But it looks like there may be a bigger, better, greater option out there. It is in negotiations, so we are not able to talk about where yet, but we hope to have that announcement soon. And thanks to the administration for their due diligence in reaching out to every what seems like district in Bergen County to inquire about space, and also in their efforts to reach out to parochial schools and other rental spaces throughout the county. And it seems like we have a great option that hopefully our students will be moving into for the start of next school year. And once that contract is finalized, we'll be looking forward to make that announcement.
Anyone have questions, comments? Okay, great. Next, we have our student reports. And first, we have Andrew Varian from Pascack Hills High School.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to get started with classroom items. So first, in Miss Gamgort's entrepreneurship and marketing classes, students are conducting a taste test of 3 identical food and drink items, comparing them to competing brands to analyze how the class trends analyze to the national average. Some examples of these taste tests students are doing are popcorn, orange juice, ramen, and donuts. And this project coincides with the class's current focus on consumer decision making and market research, creating a fun atmosphere while observing how to conduct proper surveys and focus groups within the marketing and business world. Next, in Mrs. Horn's sophomore history classes, students are beginning to conduct their first research project, and students are allowed to choose any topic in history they want to research before the year of 1865. Once students have their project to research, they will write a 5 to 10 page research paper further exploring and questioning their topic. And this project, Ms. Horn says, will help develop students' critical thinking and analytical skills, allowing students to evaluate sources and construct well-supported arguments. Next, on co-curricular items. On February 12th, Pascack Hills hosted its annual Tri-M Music Honor Society induction, and this club aims to recognize the students for their academic and musical achievements, rewarding them for their accomplishments and inspiring others to excel in the music and leadership. This night included performances from over 20 students in grades 10 to 12, honoring their musical achievements throughout high school. Next, on February 19th, Pascack Hills History Club partnered with Pascack Valley's History Club to honor and recognize the 82nd anniversary of Executive Order 9066, which authorized the forced removal of anyone deemed a threat to national security from the West Coast to relocation centers. This event included guest speaker Jeff Urban from the FDR Library to further explain the history and the impact behind this executive order, along with a Q&A from both Pascack Hills and Pascack Valley's History Club at the end. Next, on February 3rd, the Black Student Union welcomed guest speaker Dr. Janine Downey, a board-certified and award-winning dermatologist. During the event, Dr. Downey shared stories about her journey in medicine as a Black woman, telling students to never give up on their dreams. She also provided healthy ways for students to take care of their skin throughout high school, as well as discuss the importance of Black History Month. At the end of the event, students attending were allowed to ask personal questions and sit down with Dr. Downey as well. Lastly, on co-curricular items, to commemorate the annual Lunar New Year, the Asian Culture Club hosted a celebration during lunch for all students and staff to attend. And during the celebration, students from the club brought many traditional Asian food items like lo mein, sesame chicken, rice balls, and gauzi. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. The celebration also included a speech and a visit from the administration, such as Principal Wheeland and the vice principals as well. Next, for athletic items, Pascack Valley combined hockey program ended their regular season with a 15-5 record, tying first place in the Freedom Division and winning a share of the league title. Most recently, they placed second overall in the Gold Cup high school tournament, outlasting many of the best teams in the county. Additionally, the team is entering the NJSIAA tournament as the #1 seed, and they play their next game tomorrow, Tuesday, hoping to continue their season and win. Next, the Pascack Valley dance team traveled to Orlando, Florida on February 15th to compete in the annual UDA National Championship competition, where they capped off an impressive 2024-2025 season, with finishing in third place out of 55 teams in Small Varsity Pom event, and they secured fifth place in the Small Varsity Team Performance event. Their dedication and hard work and passion was on full display during this event as they competed in some of the best teams in the nation. And lastly, for athletic items, the Pascack Hills wrestling team finished their regular season with a 17-10 record and a share of the league title for the second consecutive year. The team now heads into regional championships with both Sean Herman and Matt Velez placing third place in the individual divisional round of the tournament to qualify for states. And both boys need to place in the top 4 of their weight class in order to move on to the competition in states. For my fun fact, tickets are now on sale for Pascack Theater's production of Legally Blonde, which will feature over 8 different show dates, expanding from March 14th to March 22nd. And the musical will feature over 60 students from both Valley and Hills, as well, I believe students are right over here, a real-life dog. Is that true? 2 real-life dogs. So that's pretty cool. That's never been done before. So, and for my joke of the day, what did one light bulb say to the other on Valentine's Day? You light up my life. Thank you, and this concludes my board report.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, we have Ella Gokley from Pascack Valley High School.
Hi. So I'm going to start off with Valley's classroom items. So first of all, a big congratulations to freshman oboist Lena Yang on successfully auditioning for the All-North Jersey Intermediate Region Symphonic Winds. She'll perform with the ensemble on Sunday, March 9th at Randolph High School. And in addition to that, the PV Jazz Band is preparing an exciting program for their upcoming performance at the NJ State Jazz Preliminary Competition on March 3rd at Liberty Middle School in West Orange. For our second classroom item, the World Language Department will celebrate National Foreign Language Week throughout the week of March 2nd in both high schools among our Chinese, French, Italian, and Spanish classes. So students can participate in a poster contest celebrating this year's theme, which is Languages Take You Places. And in addition to that, Naomi Rodriguez will be representing our district by presenting at the NEC TFL regional conference on February 28th with her 2025 Best of NJ workshop, AI in the language classroom. And lastly, in mid-March, both Naomi Rodriguez and Teresa Del Giudice will present separate workshops at the State World Language Conference, or Fellowship of Language Educators in New Jersey. For our third item, our photography department classes have been busy with many projects, one of the most creative, I thought, being students using AI in Photoshop and Canva to kind of create their own headlines and news articles. And one that I thought was kind of funny is students made an article about like aliens who invaded our school and bursted our pipes. And on top of this, as we approach President's Day, students learned about how AI has actually influenced political campaigns in our country for longer than many of them had thought. And they learned about photography's influence on Abraham Lincoln, and they also recreated the legendary head swap by placing Lincoln's head onto John Calhoun's body. Student interest in manipulating photos led to learning some very basic history of the Surrealism movement in art, and they used photography as well as their own images to create their own surrealistic pieces. So some of the class's current favorite surrealist is Joel Robinson, so they recreated his piece Seek and Ye Shall Find. And lastly, Photography 1 students who were interested captured headshots for 50-plus thespians for our Legally Blonde show at both schools. And on Valentine's Day, students volunteered to capture studio-style Valentine's photos, and they got teachers in some of them. And lastly, several students are on track for the advanced photography class and will most likely be eligible for Adobe Certified Professional Certification in the upcoming year. For Valley's last classroom item, the district robotics team has collaborated again with their partner school in France on a website called Ready, Set, Speak, which is designed to help students with autism and speech aprasia. So 2 years ago, the PV French Honor Society students succeeded in translating the whole website into French, and the students at the high school, the partner high school in France, provided authentic recordings in French and plan to share this website with their school and their community. The Pascack Hill students in French 5 went to Le Carré Bakery in Hillsdale to learn about entrepreneurship with the owner Raphael, who came from the south of France, immigrated here to open and run his business. And again at Hills in February, the French classes traveled to Quebec with teachers Miss Schmidt, Miss Sant, and Mr. Sant to attend the annual Winter Carnival, which is a celebration of French-Canadian culture. And lastly, the French classes at Valley and Hills plan to attend the annual French Day at Montclair State on March 22nd. And on this day, high schools from all over the state attend workshops on the French language, history, and culture. And in past years, both Valley and Hills have really enjoyed this field trip. For Valley's co-curricular items, our Model UN Club attended an excellent conference at Bergen County Academies representing various countries and collaborating to resolve world issues. So a big congrats to Justin Yu for his verbal commendation and to Riley Kim and Philip Cito for their honorable mention representing the Republic of South Korea for the Social, Cultural, and Humanitarian Committee. In addition to that, the PV Beekeeping Club enjoyed making hand-dipped and poured beeswax candles. The candles actually burn clean, unlike some of the more common candle waxes, and they actually help clean the air by releasing negatively charged ions. So the club is really excited and considering making candles for sale in the future. For our athletic items, Drew mentioned this, but our dance team competed in Orlando at the DTU National Dance Championships, and they placed 5th with their team performance and 3rd with the POM routine. And their coaches are very proud of them. The Pascack swim team held its first ever swimathon to raise money for the American Red Cross. So the swimmers completed their fundraiser during their morning practice, their regular morning practice, and each swimmer collected donations and swam laps in support of this cause. In total, they raised $1,960 for the Red Cross, and they thank all who participated in and supported the swimathon, and they look forward to continuing this tradition next year. The Pascack swim team also has several swimmers who qualified for the state meet of champions on March 1st. Amanda Bramley will swim in the 50 freestyle and 100 backstroke, and the team also has their girls 400 freestyle relay competing in the event. So good luck to all swimmers at the state meet. For Valley's fun fact, junior prom is coming up on March 5th next week, and also Valley's executive council, along with all class councils, is planning the class cause week that we have every year, which will start on March 10th. And basically the week consists of events and fundraisers to raise awareness and money for each class cause. So they're encouraging everybody to get involved and help support. For my joke, what do you do at the end of the last day of February? You march on. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Ella. Okay, next we have to resolve the minutes for the last January 27th, 2025 regular meeting and the executive meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Usami?
Ms. Calderon,
Yes.
Ms. Guzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Huang,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Stankus,
Yes.
Ms. Steffens,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese.
Yes. Next, we have comments from the public. Citizens are invited to make comments regarding agenda items and are limited to 3 minutes. According to the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education Policy Number 0167, persons wishing to speak must, upon being recognized, rise, sign in, and state their name, town of residence, and which agenda item they are referencing.
Push the button. Yep.
Okay, sorry. Hello. My name is Zahra Islam. I'm a sophomore at Hills. I'm from Montvale, and I, along with my other classmates, we're trying to request to get both Eids off from the school calendar. We planned this request before, and I know you guys have already addressed it, but we think it's especially important because although I understand that your hesitancy is regarding trying to prioritize as much instructional time as possible, when students like us have to take the day off for Eid, it really does set us back educationally, trying to keep up, trying to get back on track. So I think having the holiday off, it would be very beneficial, and it would it would foster a more inclusive environment for Hills and Valley.
Hi, I'm Aya. I'm from Wycliffe Lake, sorry. And I'm a sophomore. I also just wanted to say that I think it's really important because I don't think that a lot of the Muslims in our school know that they can take it off, because in our club there's not that many Muslims, but we know that there are a lot who celebrate that aren't very vocal about it.
And we see them like in school, and we know that they're in school during our Eid, even when they can be taking off and celebrating with their family. And like just a second what she said, it is very hard to like catch up after, because it's not an excused absence. I didn't get it excused, so it was really hard, and I don't think my teachers understood either.
Hi, my name is Maya. I'm also from Montvale. I'm someone who's struggled with attendance a lot, so typically I'll have upwards of more than 10 absences per year. But oftentimes those come from Ramadan. It's a very stressful month. We have to fast for 30 days. You can't eat, you can't drink water. Along with that time of year, it can be very stressful, especially I'm a junior, and it's been a very stressful year for me. Not getting those days off really, it can be so much of a hassle at the end of the year having to appeal. So I believe giving these students who are just trying to practice their religion a chance, that's all we ask for, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Are you are you both here for the theater, for the play? Yeah, why don't you go ahead and speak even though it's not on the agenda? We know you really want to stay with us for the whole entire meeting, but you can go home after.
Hi, my name is Jesse. This is Sadie. We're company managers for Pascack Theater, the combined theater program of Pascack Hills and Pascack Valley. And we're here to once again formally invite you guys to attend our upcoming spring musical, as they mentioned, Legally Blonde, for free.
You can acquire your tickets at pascackvalley.org, and we will be sending you an email shortly about free ticket info.
And we're just going to hand out the posters now so you have the info and the dates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're so excited.
I know. Next, we have policy, for which we have one consent agenda item. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Usami.
Ms. Calderon,
Yes.
Ms. Guzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Huang,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Stankus,
Yes.
Ms. Steffens,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese.
Yes. Next, we have education, for which we have 3 consent agenda items. Can I get a motion, please?
Second.
Roll call, discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Usami.
Ms. Calderon,
Yes.
Ms. Guzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Huang,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Stankus,
Yes.
Ms. Steffens,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese.
Yes. Next, we have human resources, for which we have 8 consent agenda items. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Usami.
Ms. Calderon,
Yes.
Ms. Guzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Huang,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Stankus,
Yes.
Ms. Steffens,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese.
Yes. Next, we have finance, for which we have 18 consent agenda items. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Usami?
I just need to change something in number 12, which is the capital reserve withdrawal to purchase the 63 Patterson Street, the Milestones House. So originally, we did not know the exact amount, so our board attorney drafted this to say not to exceed $550,000. We do have the exact amount, so I'd like to change that to the exact amount of $499,508.27.
Big savings.
You're a tough negotiator.
It had nothing to do with that. It was just, we had to figure out the deposit and.
I'm bringing you with me next time I have to buy a car.
But that's the exact amount.
Okay.
So I
Thank
did have
you.
a question on number 7, which you had talked about earlier, the extraordinary aid. So that's okay that we can just transfer it wherever we want to transfer it. There's
That-
no cap on like we can't, it has to stay where it is, or
No, it's correct. You can transfer it to any budget line account you wish.
Good question. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really excited to see all the professional development that's on number 2.
Yes.
Question on the Patterson Street, and if we can't answer here, that's okay. What are we purchasing there? This is probably one before I was on the board.
Yeah, we call it that's a great question. We call it the Milestones House. So it's the property that we've been using for, when did we start using it?
Don't quote me, but around 2016, 2017, I believe.
Yeah, and we've been leasing it, and the owner very generously offered to actually sell us the entire unit. So we've been leasing the bottom floor for that long. We've outgrown that program, and we need to also use the top floor. And when we sort of started negotiating about a rental for the top floor, he indicated that he'd be willing to sell us the property in whole. So this is a great deal for the district. We'll be able to do the renovations that we need to make it ADA compliant and accessible, and we'll be able to have it to use for our ever-growing Milestones program in perpetuity. So we're very excited to finally have the approvals that we needed from the state to make this happen. That's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if it was relayed, but that's for our 18 to 21-year-old program, the transition program that we have. Life skills.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Usami?
Ms. Calderon,
yes.
Ms. Guzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Huang,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Stankus,
Yes.
Ms. Steffens,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese.
Yes. Next, we have old business. Any discussion?
Just was going to bring something up that we were talking about earlier. The policy that we were referring to on attendance is actually under the regulation section, not in the policy section. And it's under the students' 5,000 or 5230 in particular with early dismissals. And it really doesn't give free rein for parents to pull for an excused early dismissal. So the ways that they would be eligible to compete, it seems like, would be if there was a religious observation, if they had a disability or illness that they had to attend to, a family emergency, and that would be at the discretion of the administration, medical, dental appointments, motor vehicle exams, students' attendance in court, an interview with an employer. So it seems like it's specific as to what would be acceptable excuses, and like the prom is not at this time written in there. So I wonder, I don't know, I don't see anything about 4 hours, but it does say what would institute that half day and what would be excused if they did leave early. So I'm not sure if there's something else somewhere else, but this is, if you go under policy, there's nothing, but if you go through under there, there's regulations.
So code NJAC 6A32-8.3, a school day consists of not less than 4 hours. So,
And that's
that
it.
if you take code, correct me if I'm wrong, and then when you go to the policy on, because I was looking it up while we were talking.
Yeah, I was trying to find something, policy doesn't seem anything in the policy.
I cut off the number, but I screenshotted the one part. It says, no student who has been absent for a school day may participate in a co-curricular activity scheduled for the afternoon or evening of that school day. So if you're in school for 4 hours, in my interpretation, if you're in school for 4 hours, you have your day, and then the policy says, if you're absent, you can't participate. So if you're here for 4 hours, my interpretation of it is you can participate in extracurricular activities. And in all the years that I've been in coaching and education, that's always been the guide that I've gone by is if you're in school for 4 hours, you can participate in whatever you need to do at night.
Yeah, I thought that's what it was too, but I'm looking here and it has very specific reasons for the early dismissal. And I wonder if that's what's required in order for them to be eligible to then come back and participate. I don't know if they can just leave, go out to lunch with mom, and then come back and go to a baseball game.
Well, and I think this is where, to Mr. Weaver's point, so our handbook interprets that, like, kind of more specifically. And then our buildings have, I mean, this predates either of our current building principals, have further interpreted that specific to prom. But I think, Mr. Weaver, if you look at the athletic participation, my quick perusal, I'll say here, I think there's an option we could have selected on that particular policy that would allow the board to set the minimum for extracurriculars and for athletics, and it looks like we've not selected that option. I can't log into Strauss Esme's back end right now, but that's something that we can look at tomorrow to see what those options are. Because I think that we've not selected those specific options to give more clarity beyond what you're reading and what you're reading. I think the clarity lies with the handbook. So I mean, I think this is appropriate for board committee conversation.
Yeah, I think we need to do a little bit of a deeper dive.
Yeah.
Put it all together.
I mean, personally, I think the kids should be able to leave. So, I mean, if you're asking my personal opinion, for junior and senior prom, if it's what I think we need to, what's that?
I hear you. I remember. I do.
That's it. I mean, I just think it's not something that occurs often, and I do think there'd have to be parent permission, just like there was for senior prom. But I do think we have to kind of clean this up in order to give the administration the protection if we allow that.
Yeah, I agree. Any further discussion on anything old business? Okay. Next, any new business?
I don't have new business, but I did want to find out when we're going to schedule the post-secondary education meeting with a group.
I think Jill sent out a poll about that earlier today.
Oh, you did?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're right. We do, yeah.
Soon, though, right?
Let's touch base on
Okay.
what the agenda would look like. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was an ad hoc in finance, I believe. Yeah. No, finance? Yeah, finance.
And then the link that Sarah sent for our meeting, that's for your group.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. And I've got to give Jill credit. She found
That's
that.
great.
Thought it would be interesting for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's for the CT. Any further discussion for new business? Next, we have comments from the public. Citizens are invited to make comments and are limited to 3 minutes according to the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education Policy Number 0167. Persons wishing to speak must, upon being recognized, rise, sign in, and state their name and town of residence. Anyone? Okay. Can I get a motion to enter into executive session, please?
So motion. Oh.
And then I'll just clarify that we actually do not have an HIB to discuss. It will just be for contracts. I think it'll be, I'm sorry, yeah. I think it'll be, what do you think, 15 to 20 minutes-ish, and no action will be taken? I think more.
Yeah, about 20 minutes, I would say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.